Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls, to this Arthurian series. And on the table today, I thought I would start with the 3 books that I have been referencing that accompany each of the decks that I have been using. This is the book for Legend the Arthurian Tarot by Anna Marie Ferguson. This deck is out of print, but I have seen it quite frequently on eBay, as well as some of the Facebook Marketplace Tarot Exchange pages. And Claire Duval's Tarot Arthurien is a lovely book with big color pages. I'll show you each of these books in a moment. And this is the extensive book that comes with the Matthews deck, which has a wonderful year-long journey that accompanies the card with tons of journaling points. And this is something that I would like to do maybe after this series, is to do a personal self-study with this particular deck. And I also want to make a comment regarding working with these decks and the influence that these stories are having on other readings. Yesterday, I was doing my Marseille Monday readings, and in one of them, this Ace of Pentacles showed up between 2 people, 2 cards with people on it. And all of a sudden, I was seeing this Ace of Pentacles, this Ace of Coins, as the round table itself. And now I'm looking at this. Maybe these are even the legs that could be folded under. And I just laughed to myself. I think it's funny. You start studying something, and all of a sudden, you see the symbols everywhere. And so I'm really enjoying this series, loving these stories, and I hope as well to do something better with my Welsh pronunciation, because it is a little embarrassing, and I want to thank you all for your patience. In Keeper of Words, there is a great backstory that talks about the deck, the nature of tarot, and so forth. For the majors, let me go back a couple of pages. There is quite a detailed description of what is on the card. And I really appreciate that, not just having an oracular message, so that we know what is intended by the artist in the card. And then we have a story. And the story is, for the most part, deeply connected to what's going on in the artwork. And I will be carrying this series forward to the minors, in case you are wondering. Not quite sure how I will approach it. I might do aces and then twos and so forth. And we also have a story for each of the minor arcana. So this is kind of unique to a legend type, fairy tale type deck, where indeed we do have a story for the minors as well as the majors. And this is different from Anna Marie Ferguson's other deck, the Llewellyn Tarot, because in the Llewellyn Tarot, the stories from the Mabinogi are just a part of the majors, and the minors are much more familiar and connected to, well, the setting feels connected certainly to the region. The meanings and the way that the guidebook is written, it feels very Waite-Smith influenced. Le Tarot Arthurien by Claire Duval. This is a lovely book. It is so well bound. It's stitched. Lovely book. And for every single card, I think for the minors as well, we have a full colored page. And so you can see the details of the card a little bit larger. This is the card we're going to look at today. And so here is the card itself. And so you can look really closely. I really appreciate this in a guidebook. It's so fun. And these kind of books too, you can also use for bibliomancy, right? You can just take the book with you and randomly open to a page. So we have a poem, if you will, at the beginning on the first page facing the illustration. And then we have a title, and these are definitely Golden Dawn based. The planetary correspondence is here. The symbols in the card are defined. And then there is a bit of a description of what you see in the card, and then an explanation of its significance. We have an upright meaning or a light meaning, and then we have a reversed or perhaps a shadow meaning, depending on how you work with cards that appear upside down. I've really been enjoying working with the journaling points. And then there is a message of inspiration for each of the majors. Now let's turn to the minors. I haven't really been working with the minors. Let's go to a numbered card and then to a court card. So you can see that we have a title, but there is no poem. It does say that this is the third decan of Sagittarius. 8, 9, 10 of Wands being Sagittarius. And then this is the same format. So a very detailed guidebook. And then let's look at a court card. The courts in this deck are lovely. The kings and queens face each other. So this is the Queen of Cups. And she goes from the third decan of Gemini, first and second decan of Cancer. And the alchemy is the aspect. She's water of water. Cardinal water, and same format. So lovely. And then at the end of this book, I haven't really gone past looking at single cards. There is a bibliography, which is really useful, and a little bit about Claire Duval and the artist Arthurian. And here's a list of all of Claire Duval's publications. So yeah, this is a lovely book. And this is the book that accompanies the still available Arthurian deck by Kathleen and John Matthews, or Kathleen and John Matthews. And they are most definitely historians of this era, of these legends. There are wonderful videos on YouTube. You can listen to them talk about some of these characters and these tales that are included. And so at the beginning of the book, it does go through card by card, and it's really been interesting. Sometimes these cards align very much with Legend, the Arthurian Tarot, and other times it weaves in another aspect of those stories. And then when we get to the minors, there are, that's a court card, let's just see, quarter page descriptions, less detail there. And then I want to go to that section I was talking about. There are some spreads in the middle. And then the course, the year-long project, is the Hallow Quest course. And it is, I want to say, more than half of the book. And I think this would be just a wonderful, like I said, self-study. I find that working with the tarot and intentional reflections such as this can be deeply enlightening. And the cards are not presented in order, but there are connecting cards that come up in each of the sections. Lesson 37, it's extensive and looks absolutely amazing. Following study program is given as a suggested outline. Each lesson takes a week. The dates given below are intended to show how a course of study would work. And look at this bibliography. And I share this with you because I just want you to know that what I am doing here in this series is very much a preliminary part of this study. Interestingly, in Claire Duval's deck and Anna Marie Ferguson's deck, we are with the same story. And in the Matthews deck, we are at Glastonbury. And this is the tour that is being struck here. And we can see the deconstruction. All of the signs of the zodiac are coming apart and becoming part of the earth itself. So there's a deconstruction of sorts that is happening here. In the card center and on the right, Vortigern's fortress falls. Built as a refuge from invading Saxons, it represents his futile attempts to insulate himself from the consequences of his own actions. The keep is symbolic of the mind that created it. Under great stress, previously adequate belief systems buckle, represented by the cracks and crumbling of the walls. Flames whip the keep, suggesting the mental anguish associated with sudden change. The scaffold represents the efforts of the intellect to contain and deal with the upheaval. As can be seen, its effect is minimal. This is an irrepressible transformation. Intolerable pressure has awakened primal forces. This is symbolized by the two dragons who rise up from their resting place, a pool of water deep within the earth. This is a direct experience with elemental power. The ground ruptures and gives way, shaking the foundations of one's life. The lightning carries a message on two levels. As the long arm of fate, it echoes the futility of trying to hide from inevitable change, while it also symbolizes revelation in the form of a sudden jolt and blinding flash, putting an end to outmoded thinking. The scorched land, now encumbered, gives way to new life, the eternal cycle of destruction and creation. In the Matthews deck, lightning shatters the tower upon a high tor, but the spiral tower remains. Although the Round Table Fellowship falls apart, the eternal order, indicated by the zodiacal signs, continues to glow within the land. An owl flies with its prey. Radical change is part of the soul's evolution. Glastonbury has traditionally been associated with the Grail and Arthur, almost from the beginning of the tradition. It is a special place of pilgrimage which veils a deeper reality. The physical contours of the land are aligned to inner potencies that can be contacted at different times of the year. It is perhaps for this reason that it has been called the holiest earth. There is no physical earth zodiac at Glastonbury. This is a transcendent reality mediated by the Grail Guardian, whose point of contact is the Tor itself, a locus which is mystical and actual at once. The shattering of the round table on earth sees its reformation in the other world. The spiral tower is the place of initiation within Celtic tradition. Each individual has a different experience therein. Only a poet like Taliesin is enabled to speak, however obscurely, about what is found there. In reflecting on the Tower card, often what appears to be random dissolution or destruction of your beliefs or relationships or your home or your situation is timely. It is exactly where you need to be. It is exactly what is in your highest. This could manifest as a dissolution of a job. It could be the ending of a relationship. Any number of ways that this card appears in your circumstances. It can be very traumatic. It can leave you stunned and shocked. However, through my experience and working with a variety of clients over the years, I have found that if we go back and we widen our perspective, usually we saw this coming. There was a sense of it. There was a foreboding energy. There were signs. There were clues, cues, and we may have chosen to stick our head in the sand. But for those of you who are doing this work and are wanting to shift and change your life for the better, these kinds of experiences can be enlightening and revolutionary in a great, great way. And I think depending on where we are in our life, sometimes the trauma of this card feels more like a gift than something terrible that has happened to us. I think that it's also important not to be angry or bitter at what is being left behind or has been destroyed, but to see it as a natural falling away of something that no longer serves. And in the case of Vortigern's tower, it was built on false pretenses. And we have other examples in the tarot from different cultures, different times, different places, where towers, institutions are built for the wrong reasons. And when the structure is not built on honest, trustworthy, principled values and beliefs, we know that it won't last long. And so I like this story that accompanies here, and I'm going to read it to you about the dragons that have been kept beneath the tower. And here we see their release in this particular card, the red dragon and the white dragon. One of the stories of the Welsh Mabinogion tells us that long ago, many years before the time of Arthur, the king of Britain was a man named Lludd. He was a fine warrior, generous and kind. Britain prospered under his reign, with the exception of 3 plagues. One of these plagues was a terrible scream heard every May Eve throughout the realm. It was so chilling a sound that it caused people to lose their senses and stripped the land of her fruits. Llefelys, brother of Lludd, told the king that the only way to rid the people of this horror was to find the center of the land, dig down into the earth, and there he would find 2 fighting dragons, the source of the scream. These dragons would then have to be subdued with the finest mead, and once asleep, transported and hidden, buried deep beneath the earth in the strongest place in the land. Lludd did all Llefelys had instructed, and buried the sleeping dragons in Snowdonia in a strong place that would come to be known as Dinas Emrys. Just as his brother had assured, the land was left in peace. 500 years passed, and again the people of the land lived in terror. Vortigern, the usurper, sat upon the throne. He hired Saxon mercenaries to drive back the northern raiders, but the Saxons took a liking to the lush lands of Britain and thought to claim it for themselves. Vortigern had opened the door to invaders. He took refuge in Wales, and there, under the counsel of his magi, he prepared to build a fortress on what seemed a fitting spot, Dinas Emrys. The labor of Vortigern's men proved to be in vain, as each morning they found their achievements of the preceding day in ruins. The fortress would not stand. The confounded Vortigern turned to his magi, who then advised him to sacrifice a fatherless boy and sprinkle the blood upon the foundations. Only then would the structure hold. Vortigern's men found such a boy in South Wales. He and his mother were then brought before the king at Dinas Emrys. The boy told Vortigern that his name was Ambrosius, or Merlin, according to Geoffrey of Monmouth's account. Sensing the nature of Vortigern's plans, the young Ambrosius, Merlin, dared to confront the Druids, asking if they knew the reason for the nightly destruction. Having confessed to their ignorance, Merlin turned to face Vortigern, explaining that if he were to dig down beneath the site, he would reach a pool of water which had undermined his fortress. Within the pool he would find 2 dragons, one red, the other white. This was done, and once the dragons were unearthed, they began to fight. Merlin spoke, blaming the destruction of the fortress on the fierce nocturnal battles of the dragons. Vortigern was clearly impressed with the talents of the youth, but Merlin had more yet to say. Turning his gaze to the battling dragons, he told all present that the red dragon represented the Britons, while the white represented the Saxons. The crowd looked on the symbolic battle in horror, as the white dragon seemed to overpower the defending red dragon. Merlin prophesied that the rivers of the land would run red with blood before Britain recovered and drove back the Saxon tide. But Vortigern would not be the king to lead the country to victory. Merlin foretold that Vortigern's life would be taken by either the Saxons, Aurelius Ambrosius, or Uther. Vortigern's enemies were many, and his end was near. I think these first two questions are really interesting because they can manifest in different ways. The first one is what is collapsing in or around me? What is collapsing in or around me? And it might be very subtle rather than obvious what is falling away. I like that expression, what is falling away. It's like these layers are naturally falling away and eventually will reveal something. And there's a bit of a process to this card. It may appear in a reading a little bit early, almost like a foreshadowing that something is about to no longer be needed in your life. Sometimes when this card appears earlier than expected, it can be confusing, of course, but it can also be a great blessing as preparation for this change in your life. Now, the second question is another way that you may work with this card, and that has to do with being trapped. So you may be the dragons who are trapped beneath the earth, experiencing the frustration, the inability to get out. So this could be equated in that case to something like a 8 of Swords, but more archetypal and perhaps a pattern that has been repeating again and again. The second point here says, what beliefs am I a prisoner of? What beliefs am I a prisoner of? So what is making you feel so frustrated? There may be something in your mind that needs to shift. I think about where this card is on the tree of life, and the energy of Mars itself, the energy of the fives. And all of those would be important cards to consider if they also came up in a reading. But there's also something really interesting about the path of the tower on the tree of life. It is one of 3 horizontal paths that connects the left pillar to the right pillar. It is the lowest of the 3 horizontal paths. Above it is the path of strength or lust, and then above that is the path of the Empress. This path of the tower also connects the 7th and the 8th Sephira, the Sephira of Venus, Netzach, with Mercury, Hod. What I feel, there's so many things we could talk about here, but this path between these 2 difficult Sephira reminds me that we won't find harmony until we learn to balance our 7s and our 8s. And for those of you that read the tarot, you know how difficult and confusing the 7s and the 8s can be. And there's something about the tower that can help us to reset powerful experience, Venusian experience of living and fully experiencing life with higher frequencies of Hod, which help us to discern more clearly, to value wisdom over information and facts. So this is, there's a lot of work that can be done with this particular card, and I love the metaphor of the dragons being blocked and kept and hidden and rumbling away beneath the earth as a feeling for what we may experience in the Tower card. And as you well know, the major arcana, the tarot in general, does not present itself in order. However, I think it is good to know that often The Tower is a response to not navigating or dealing with the dysfunctional issues that arise in the Devil card. And it is no accident that the Tower appears after the Devil. And I want to say that if we are able to see and get support and learn the lesson of the Devil card, what feels like a logical direction is then temperance. If, however, we do not deal with those things, then the Tower appears as experiences, situations, to deconstruct that which is literally destroying us. So it's so fascinating. It can be super challenging to be patient and have the strength to endure through this time of our lives. But I know from experience that it is a really great one. And eventually we will come to know and understand the freedom and the higher purpose of this card. So thank you for being here today, and I look forward to your responses to this discussion. Thank you. Namaste.